We're just going to give it another minute or two because we hear people are filtering down from upstairs. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for arriving. I know it's kind of hard, especially on the second day, for people to get here bright and early at 9 o'clock, but I really appreciate you all coming. I think we have a really interesting program here this morning, and let me just start by introducing myself quickly. I'm your faithful moderator. My goal today is not only we have some presentations and we have some commentary from some folks around the table, but also to engage all of you in this discussion this morning. It's really important for us to hear ideas from around the world. We do have to provide a report on this session, and so ideas for how we can make things better is something that we'd really like to report on. So I'm hoping that you'll all at some point engage in this conversation. The structure of this morning is we have a couple of presentations, and then we have a couple of commentary from some people around the world about some of the things they're doing in terms of multi-stakeholder collaboration around cybersecurity awareness, and then we're going to open it up for a discussion with you all. So I am Michael Kaiser. I am the Executive Director of the National Cybersecurity Alliance in the United States. We are a NGO. We are a public-private partnership. We are funded by government, specifically the Department of Homeland Security, as well as our corporate partners from all around the internet, financial services, internet service providers, banks, payment systems, to do education and awareness in cybersecurity. We've been around since 2001. And I'm not going to go into a lot of these programs. I think Jacqueline will talk about a few of them. But we created programs like National Cybersecurity Awareness Month in the United States in October. We are the group in the United States that's implementing Data Privacy Day, which actually comes from the EU in the United States. We've created a campaign which we'll talk about, which we think is global, and we also work on issues like educating boards and CEOs about their role in cybersecurity. So we really work with everyone, and we try to bring all of this to scale. We think that's the most important element that we have in what we do, is how we get everybody involved and use all the resources and leverage everybody that we can in this space. But I'm going to turn it right over to Daria Catalui from ENISA. She works on education and awareness in ENISA on cybersecurity, and I'll let her have the first presentation, so take it away. You want this?
Good morning, everybody. I am Daria Catalui. I'm dealing with e-education in ENISA. ENISA stands for European Network Information Security Agency. It has its headquarters in Crete and the office in Athens. I am part of the office in Athens. Basically, our boss is Nelly Cruz, that you all heard in the opening session yesterday. And we are basically working for the European member countries. I have some slides to present, but I would like just to talk more. You will see some basic graphs that we use in our work, and the talk will supplement those images. So first of all, I would like to say a few words about ENISA. You see on your PowerPoint on the second slide that we are publishing recommendations in an area of CERT, SCADA, cryptography, privacy, resilience, cloud. These are only some of the topics that we deal with. Policy implementation. We are part of the policy with recommendations. The Commission is doing the policy work and we are recommending. And hands-on training. This basically for the CERT teams in Europe, and the Cyber Europe, the cyber exercises. I'm sure most of you heard about it. Here in front of you, you see a map that we are currently it's not published yet, so this is like a launching event in the public. You are the first community that sees it. Basically, it's a work of a wiki work that it will be permanently updated with few of the main, very important dates of awareness globally celebrated. You can see there Cybersecurity Month for October, which is celebrated in the US for the first time. Afterwards, Europeans took also the best practice, and we also implemented since 2012. We see also the Safer Internet Day. Probably you also saw that the Safer Internet team has a booth on the first level, and you can visit them to take more material and talk with them. Safer Internet Day is celebrated every year. There is also a World Backup Day, Get Online Week, Girls in ICT Day, which is also very important because it's an ITU awareness day celebrated globally, Copyright Day, Password Day, and we also have at European level also celebrated worldwide the Digital Agenda Day, which will be this September on the 29th. So you are also invited to be there. But my work relates to the cybersecurity month. Related to this graph, I just want to say that we want to get the graph updated. So if you have any other action day that is celebrated globally, please talk to me and we can make a new version of the graph. I will not get to this policy because it's just the policy, the cybersecurity strategy for the European Union, which was published in February 2013, and basically says that ENISA is involved in the awareness and education of European users related to cybersecurity issues. And in front of you, on the screen, in front of your eyes, you can see now some words about the Cybersecurity Month. Basically, it's an annual campaign that targets education for European users, and we try to get all the member states on board. What I am talking now, it's about an effort of more than 28 EU member states, because we also include EU partners in this campaign. So it's a very large effort of sustaining the education in cybersecurity. ENISA's role in the Cybersecurity Month is to brokerage. We are the ones that support with all the materials and the website and with the coordination of the partners, but the main action and the grassroots activities are dealt by the partners. Last year, we had more than 60 private and public organizations involved. This year, we hope we will have more, or at least we will stay with a good number of partners. Next, I would like to show you in a slide. I will not go through all the milestones, but I just want to, for you to visualize that Cybersecurity Month is an annual campaign. So we start in January with the work and we finish in December. Even though the work you can, most of the people see in October, because the October is the time when everybody hears about Cybersecurity Month in media or through their organizations with grassroots actions. We as a team, or the team of Cybersecurity Month, work from January to December. So there are a lot of intermediary steps. There is a preparation step, there is a coordination phase. In the coordination phase, I also proudly say that we had a very good coordination with the US part. So thank you for that. We, at European level, we also had a lot of coordinators calls, imagine calls, online calls with 28 member states. We had 4 of them for this year. And I would also like to say a few words about the coordination model that we use. Since in EU we'd like to have all member states involved and on an equal footing, we use a model with centered on the Commission and ENISA in the middle, since we are the ones that coordinate the whole campaign, and we try to involve the national liaison officers of ENISA, which is a network that we work with. Networks of multipliers, we also try to involve them. Here I would like to emphasize on the fact that networks of multipliers are one of the main partners in Cybersecurity Month at the European level. We use a network of multipliers like Europe Direct, most of you, maybe you are aware of them. Networks of multipliers like associations, platforms of universities, platforms from Brussels or from other capitals. We use CERTs also, because some of them, they also have the educational portfolio for their teams. And we will also use and have a good communication with the representation of the Commission in each capital and member state. They are crucial for the deployment of the cybersecurity month at European level, and that's why the networks of multipliers are one of the our main partners. As a matter of fact, we as ENISA, we will offer them for their support and their work a training day by our CERT team, part of our collaboration. The next two main actors are the public actors, like authorities, ministries. Personally, I work very well with ministries of education and CERT teams, since they are the ones that implement and deploy cybersecurity actions in member states, and also private actors like companies that are interested to train their users and participate in the overall education of digital users. Mainly, I will go again here on the main timeline, just saying that for the October month, we plan the kickoff event on the 1st of October in Brussels. Those of you that maybe would like to be present can also write to us back to get an invitation. It's based on invitation, and each of the week of October we will have a new report published, new activities, and also a lot of interactions with the US and globally. So thank you for that too. I will finish with the Twitter account, which we use a lot, and we also created quite a big community on Twitter. We use these hashtags, Cybersecurity Month, October NIS, and you can also visit the website that we have updated with all the information from member states. Thank you, and I'm waiting for your questions in the end.
Thank you, Daria. That's great. I love your network of multipliers. I usually just call them partners, but I think that's a much better phrase, so I'm going to steal that and use that. I'm now going to hand over to Jacqueline Boucher from Microsoft. Let me just say, I've worked with Jacqueline a long time. She's the Chief Online Safety Officer at Microsoft, which I think is an awesome title. That somebody actually has that title, I think is great. But more importantly to me, she's a longtime partner, but she's also the chair of the board of the National Cybersecurity Alliance. So thank you, Jacqueline.
Good morning, and thank you, Michael. Thank you to Michael for inviting me to participate in this panel, and also thank you to the IGF for bringing this important discussion to light. I want to speak specifically this morning about a particular experience with regard to cybersecurity awareness raising and the multi-stakeholder approach, specifically in the form of a public-private partnership. But I'd first like to briefly explain why, in my view, I think it's important that we have such collaborative efforts in place. At the end of the day, when we talk about public awareness raising in cybersecurity and educating individuals and families about staying safer online, it's all for a specific purpose. And that purpose is that we are trying to affect behavioral change. We want individuals to be better digital citizens. We want them to exercise safer online habits and practices, and we want them to be protected because we want them to do their part to protect the overall ecosystem. Moreover, we want them to try to influence and encourage others to behave appropriately and responsibly online as well. But as we all know, behavioral change is difficult, it takes time, and it certainly doesn't happen at internet speed. I view this progression as sort of moving people along a behavioral change continuum, and it starts with awareness raising. And we need to raise people's awareness, make them aware of what is happening and what could potentially happen with certain risks online. Then we need to do what we can to change their attitudes, then change their beliefs, and ultimately to change their behavior, hopefully for the better. So again, along that continuum, the first step is awareness raising. So back in 2009, the US National Cybersecurity Alliance teamed with APWG, the organization formerly known as the Anti-Phishing Working Group. And the very purpose of their effort of teaming together was to raise awareness about online safety and security. They set out to agree a single, actionable, unifying message that many groups across the United States could use with consumers. And certainly in the United States and now globally, there is no shortage of consumer education and awareness raising efforts and messages. For that very reason, the two organizations got together and they thought that it would be so much more impactful if there was a singular actionable message that could be repeated by numerous players in the ecosystem about online safety and security, all that were in the consumer's ambit of online safety and security, as opposed to these multiple messages, these less powerful, potentially diluted messages, having to break through various concerns in a consumer's everyday life. So the NCSA brought together 25 companies from the United States, from the private sector, and also various US government agencies and departments. And they wanted to see if they could really come up with this kind of a singular actionable message that would, first of all, resonate with consumers, and then second of all, drive them to action. And that brings me one of my first key learnings in this process. When we're pursuing this kind of behavioral change along this continuum, it's important to know what drives consumers to action. And I think we all know that unfortunately, it's typically something bad happening to them. They're not necessarily very engaged to proactively see what they could do to better their situation or to improve themselves. Instead, they wait for something bad to happen to them, and then they try to take action. So we wanted to make sure that the message was simple, that it was easily understood, and that it was not going to tax or deter people in any way. So NCSA and APWG brought this group together on several occasions. They set out a roadmap for achieving this goal, and one step in that process was to ground the effort in research. And indeed, all of our efforts, we really need to ensure that we are raising awareness about real risks and genuine potential harm. So that brings us to key learning number 2, which is to make sure that the efforts are data-driven, to respond to a true need as opposed to a perceived one, and then to recognize and distinguish between risk and harm and possibility and probability. Next key learning, to really cast a wide net, to be inclusive, to invite stakeholders big and small to participate in the dialogue. Members of this group included not only the National Cybersecurity Alliance and APWG and Microsoft, but also Facebook and Google, AT&T, Verizon, Symantec, McAfee, Intel, Costco, smaller US companies and technology providers as well. And there's a long list of US government agencies and departments. So I'll share just a few of the high-level research findings that help to frame this group's work. Americans were asked to gauge their level of being informed and being interested in online safety and security. 90% of them said that they were interested, 84% said that they were informed, and this is dating back again to 2009. 38% said that they were very interested, and only 18% said that they were very informed. Of the 90% who said that they were interested, 99% said that they feel vulnerable online. 96% said that online threats were a top concern. And finally, 95% said that they don't take enough action when it comes to being proactive about these issues because they need more information and guidance. So all of these data points and many others that came out of the NCSA research confirmed the need for a cybersecurity awareness campaign in the US. The next step in the process was message testing. So if the research indicated a need for the campaign, the group sort of had some ideas as to what that potential message might look like and what that campaign might look like, so it took the opportunity to test some of those messages. Another key learning was that certain types of messages or their tone and tenor, I think we have to realize they just don't work. So these are very serious issues that we're talking about, so humor is probably not the way to go. And too much fear-based messaging or fear-mongering in that approach is also ineffective. What we've found at Microsoft and through this effort is To play it straight is probably the best approach. And thus, Stop, Think, Connect was born. Stop, Think, Connect is that simple, actionable message that's used by all of these organizations that I mentioned and various entities as they work to keep consumers safer online. Of the 30 or so founding members of the organization of Stop, Think, Connect, and it's now a messaging convention, that's how it's become known, different members have embraced Stop, Think, Connect in different ways. For instance, at Microsoft, we use the message in all of the educational and public awareness raising collateral that we produce, whether it's a brochure or a video or a fact sheet or a PowerPoint presentation or a tip card. Stop, Think, Connect is always mentioned. At the time, we also made what we'd like to call a gift to the messaging convention. We created a series of videos that could be used by any organization for various stages in the Stop, Think, Connect process, whether we're talking about online activity on the go, or at home, or at work. We created these videos and we donated them to the messaging convention. And we also donated some PowerPoint presentation templates and some Word document templates so that we could all look uniform and together and speaking as one voice about these issues. We also highlight Stop, Think, Connect at Microsoft in our Policymaker's Guide to Online Safety, and we regularly participate in Stop, Think, Connect events and board meetings and Twitter chats and so forth. Other founding members of the messaging convention donated collateral and materials as well, and STC materials can be licensed by anyone who asks. There's certainly been tremendous growth in the number of users of the Stop, Think, Connect message. So in addition to the founding members, there are now adopters in academia, in the retail and transportation and energy sectors, in aerospace, in social media, and elsewhere. And since its 2010 launch, almost 4 years ago, next month, Stop, Think, Connect has been recreated or adopted by nearly 150 organizations, either for their internal use, typically to educate their employees, or to share with consumers. And I like to think, like any good idea, Stop, Think, Connect has gone global. International efforts began on a rather ad hoc basis, and there was particular interest from some countries or some geographies, but it has since expanded to 13 countries. Chile just signed last week, in fact. And then it rose to a new level of international cooperation in May of this year, when NCSA and APWG got together and Microsoft hosted at our Paris offices a meeting of 40 different individuals representing governments and technology companies and non-governmental organizations, civil society, child safety advocates from 13 different geographies. We assembled for what we believe to be sort of a 2-day working session where we said, where can we do even more to participate on a global basis? How can we sort of galvanize around a particular message, whether that be Stop, Think, Connect, hopefully, or something else, that we can again work through what consumers are hearing and seeing on a regular basis to get them more energized about online safety and security issues. The group said that we would seek to coordinate around some key dates, some of the dates that Daria mentioned in her presentation, particularly Cybersecurity Month in October and International Safer Internet Day in February. We're also welcoming new members to that group that assembled for the first time in Paris, and everyone was very energized, and we hope to meet again within a year or so. So you all may be wondering why Microsoft would take on such an active role in something like Stop, Think, Connect. At the end of the day, we are a technology company, and we see that we have a shared responsibility in that notion of helping to protect consumers and educating them about online risks that are out there. But we also believe that together as government and industry and NGOs and child safety organizations and law enforcement and others, that we can accomplish more in public awareness raising and education than any one of these single entities can do on its own. And much like the initial NCSA research showed, when one organization or person is safer and more secure online, or all others benefit from that state of being as well. And that was a secondary message that was devised from the NCSA research. We have our umbrella message, which is Stop, Think, Connect. And then a subsequent message is safer for me, more secure for all. So in summary, I'd want to underscore the importance of online safety and security awareness raising and education, and place special emphasis on the need to simplify and unify those messages as much as possible. Again, we need to break through the many messages and pieces of guidance that consumers are receiving on a daily basis about all aspects of their lives. And it will be far more impactful to hear a single compelling message from several different trusted entities as opposed to sort of loosely similar messages from a multitude of organizations. So working together, I know that we can continue to capitalize on what Stop Think Connect has started and gain even further ground moving forward. If you are more interested in Microsoft's participation in Stop Think Connect or our work in online safety and security generally, our website is microsoft.com/safety. And to find more information about Stop Think Connect, that website is stopthinkconnect.org. So thank you, and I look forward to the remainder of the dialogue.
Thank you, Jacqueline. We have a few discussants that I'm going to go to in a second. I just want to add one little piece to Jacqueline, and I want to say it also dovetails off the network multiplier concept that Daria raised, which is, when we created this in concert with industry and government, and our partner at the Department of Homeland Security took this campaign, and they have their own Stop Think Connect campaign, which dovetails with the industry's campaign, dovetails with the NGO campaign, and it's really important that it gives validity and legitimacy to the message when multiple partners adopt it. And I can't underestimate that from our perspective in the United States. It might be different in other places. How important that role is that government plays in helping to, in the United States, maybe different in other countries. In the United States, the government has a long history of doing education for people about safety, whether it's cyber safety or car seats or seat belts or drunk driving or any number of public health issues. The government plays a very, very important role as an educator, and they've played an incredibly important role here. So I think it's really important to call that out and note that for everyone, because I think that's part of what we're trying to talk here is about the multi-stakeholder approach. Speaking of which, we have a few people in the audience who have some specific experiences around the multi-stakeholder approach and education awareness. I'm going to go to them, and then we're going to go to the large audience. But I'm going to start with Subi here on my left. She'll introduce herself. She has a very specific experience from India working in education awareness using Stop Think Connect, but I think it's really important for people to hear what you did. It was very exciting for us to hear what you did, and we're thrilled that you're here to share it with us.
Thank you so much, Michael, and thank you, Jacqueline. I will take it forward from some of the ideas and key thoughts that Jacqueline and Michael have shared with you today. It has been a story that I'm really proud and happy to tell. As someone who works in India with young members of the internet governance community, and I'd like to see more of them in the room today and in other main rooms holding the mic and speaking and sharing their experiences. But what we did in India was unique in many ways. This was a key message in 3 quick, easy steps. How is it that you can maximize the value of this amazing, empowering, enabling medium, which is the internet? So stop, think, connect. And then what is it that you do there? How is it that you can engage with these key messages and make them your own? I am really particularly delighted to be here because we're discussing multi-stakeholder perspectives in cybersecurity. And very often I have been told that there is no place on the table for people like us in these conversations, because governments know how to protect you, they know how to keep you safe, and they know what's good for you. So we turned this around and we brought governments to the table, and we said, if you're not on the table, you're going to be on the menu. This is the story that I want to tell today. So as someone who makes films and shoots photography, we took these wonderful ideas that came to us, and I want to turn the screen around and walk you through some of these images that have been created by 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds, and their expression of how they'd like to see the world responding to some of the key threats and experiences experiences that they have online. This is from the Facebook page of Stop Think Connect. So in India, Jacqueline mentioned about 25 companies. We had Facebook, Microsoft, Google, and Kaspersky coming together under the roof umbrella of the Data Security Council of India and Media for Change, which is a foundation that I run of collectives, academics, and journalists. And very often we forget the media. The internet remains one of the largest medias that we have today. And in this acronym-ridden world of the IG space, we forget that we have to speak. If you want advocacy, if you want to disseminate these key messages, you have to speak in their language. They might not come to you, but you have to go to them. So we took senior government officials from CERT, which is the Central Emergency Response Team. We took government officers from the Department of IT and Security. We took global leaders from Microsoft, from Google, and Kaspersky, and we brought them together in large open spaces using radio as a very powerful medium which connects a lot of us. Remember, internet penetration, according to the ITU figures, and which is fairly reliable, is only 11.4% in a country like India. And we hope that with 840 million mobile phones, we have more people who have access to mobile phones than toilets. A lot of them are going to be coming online through this medium. So what we wanted to do is create an internet safety movement, a celebration of the internet as a platform for good. So we took them partnering with a leading radio channel, and we did street theater performances and competitions across some of the largest universities in 4 major metros across India. The Facebook page, the Twitter integration, the mainstream media integration happened to make this an ecosystem that belonged to all of us. Here, there was no podium, there was no talking down to people. Remember, they're digital natives, they're online, and traditional institutions of socialization have really been turned on their heads. So they're the ones who are getting their parents online with simple messages like, if you don't have it on your t-shirt, remember you don't want to have it online, because there'll be a digital footprint. If you look left, you look right, when you cross the road, remember you will do that when you're online. When you create a safer community, all of us grow together, all of us use the internet for better experiences, for maximizing value. So here's what happened, and this is a really brief snapshot of what we achieved in India. So these are just some of the images that I will very quickly walk you through. And they have all been created by young students who are about 8-year-old, 10-year-old. There are videos, there are cartoons, there are really simple messages that you can take home and make your own. This is a story that we want to tell, because when you have messages which are important and that affect all of us, it is equally important to locate them culturally, to locate them in their own spaces, in their own comfort zone, and co-opt them, as you very rightly pointed out, and make them force multipliers. I think when we're looking at cybersecurity, let us not look at a one-size-fits-all. Let us not look at a blanket approach to cybersecurity. So when I teach young girls at a women's college in Delhi University, their mothers come to me, and I teach new media technology, and they're always on Facebook. What is it that they're doing? We're worried. So you have to tell them it's part of their academic engagement. A mother is worried about her daughter not getting harassed. There are about 6-year-olds who are committing suicide because they're being bullied online. These are engagements that we will have to make, engaging families, engaging stakeholder communities, and redefining our ideas of cybersecurity, because they mean different things to different people. I think Stop Think Connect is one of the most powerful mediums and a fantastic force mobilizer, where you could get people to go online and look at Microsoft's resources and tools. We have to empower people. And this is just the last bit about my intervention. Professor Amartya Sen, someone who writes about the developing countries and power of the media, talks about the capabilities approach. When we want people to use the internet as an engine for growth and development, it is important to empower them, build capacity, and give them a skill set that will make sure that they're able to use the full potential of this powerful medium. So I thank everybody who's initiated this movement movement, you really mean a lot to a developing country and an emerging economy. Thank you so much for your time and your patience, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions or observations or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. It was, when we learned about it, again, this is that organic approach. It was so powerful to us as well, the way you took this and made it for your community and the way they acted on it and brought it to life. It's fantastic. Got a couple other discussants here. Adli, you want to talk a little bit about how certs are working in your region of the world? Yeah. Maybe explain to everybody what a cert is, just in case they don't know.
Sure. Thank you, Michael, and good morning, everyone.
It can be that too.
All right, so I'm going to be looking at the issue from the perspective of CERTs, or Computers Emergency Response Team, CERT, or sometimes people also call it CSIRT, Computer Security Incident Response Teams. So my name is Adli. I currently work for APNIC as a security specialist. I also am a board member of FIRST, the Forum of Incident Security and Response Team. And I was working with the national CERT in Malaysia and had worked with a few regional CERT organizations like AP CERT and OIC CERT. So today I'm going to look at the story from the perspective of, when you have cybersecurity awareness programs, where does the story comes from? Who tells you? So if you talk about phishing, people in a certain location will wonder whether or not this kind of incident do affect us or do affect me, or do banks in our region or in our country are affected by it or not. When you hear media hyping about certain incidents about leakages of cloud provider X or Y, does these things happen locally as well or not, right? So the story normally comes from the computer emergency response teams. And this is so because they look at incidents on a day-to-day basis. And these are local incidents, incidents that are affecting the local constituency. Now, when you talk about CSIRT, there are many kinds of CSIRT or CERTs. I'm going to be focusing a bit more on the national CSIRT because they are normally funded by governments and they have good resources as well as they see a lot of incidents escalated to them. And I would like to highlight that in the past, many of the National Security Response Team or CERTs in the region where I work at, especially in Asia Pacific, has been very critical in providing this input for a lot of the security awareness programs. So messages on things like phishing or best security practices on how to secure your computer, your laptop, how to avoid identity theft and things like that are being provided or being contributed by the CSIRT simply because they see this on a day-to-day basis. And the security incident response team are important in two forms. One, like I said earlier, that they are able to contextualize the information. So, for example, if you're talking about malware incident, maybe they could provide an example of a local malware that is affecting the public at large. Number two, they are also able to translate awareness into action. So, for example, now that you are infected by this particular malware, where do you get help, right? And where do you get help is also a very important component because this is where we can teach more and encourage behavioral change, as mentioned by Jacqueline earlier, right? So now you are infected by malware, but in the future maybe you should consider doing this and that and so on and so forth. From another perspective, the Security Information Incident Response Team are able to also collect information on what's happening locally in the constituencies and get this information and record it and maybe take this to a different level in terms of influencing policies in different sectors in a particular country, or work with other organizations such as the educational sector or law enforcement agencies in making a more meaningful and impactful message, right? So because as we all know, sometimes the problem with a lot of the security messaging is that they only promote FUD, fear and doubt and uncertainty and doubt. People are afraid, but you don't really provide technical solutions, and sometimes the information that you're trying to sell to people do not reach out to the public at large. So these are some of the challenges. And CERTs are able to work with a lot of these organizations in a particular country to make the message more impactful. And I can give you a lot of examples in countries like Malaysia or Indonesia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, India. A lot of the CERTs were behind the scenes in building many of these messaging programs. And you can see in some places, they have icons, and they use cartoon characters, and they get on TVs and things like that. And they are able to provide, like I said, contextual information, and also the importance of CERT in this respect is being able to keep the information about threats current. So maybe in the last 10 years in a particular country, the most threatening security incident could be phishing or web defacement. But today you have things like CryptoLocker and things like that. So the certs are able to provide, what's current, what's the latest, are we seeing this in our consistency or not, and so on and so forth, and then use that information to be built into some cybersecurity awareness programs. Now, I'm going to just talk about one more thing. That, although there are certs working at the national level, many organizations also have C-certs, banks, oil and gas organization, and so on and so forth. And they also have this role of looking at incidents and translating them into lessons learned so that this could be shared with top management in terms of, what needs to be done or how we failed, what happened, and what kind of resources we need to actually make ourselves more secure. So the certs not only have a role at the national level, but also at an enterprise level. And finally, many of the certs actually work together in terms of sharing information. So this is also a form of awareness creation. So maybe an incident maybe there is a very advanced attack, in Brazil. I haven't seen it yet, but in some forums, like AP CERT or OIC CERT or FIRST, this information could be shared so the technical community are prepared to handle this situation if it occurs to them in the future, right? So that sort of security awareness, not a typical one that you see with phishing and things like that, but also what we saw, how it worked, what you should be aware of, and what sort of things could be put in place to make sure that when it happens to you, it will not have as much impact as it did to us. So that sort of information sharing takes place among the CSIRT community as well. So just to conclude, I just want to highlight, or my point was to highlight the role of the technical community, the CSIRT. So if they are around in your location, approach them, get stories from them to build a more effective and current or localized information security awareness programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jayantha, I don't know where did you end up sitting? Oh, there you are, okay. We're going to get a little government, slightly different perspective on the multi-stakeholder approach here from a government perspective. So please introduce yourself and share some ideas.
Thank you, Mike. I am Jayantha Fernando from the Sri Lankan government, also a GAC representative in the ICANN framework. I was involved in leading the cybercrime law and policy initiatives in Sri Lanka, and I'd like to share some of the multi-stakeholder best practices pursued in that connection. So what I would like to state here is that we in Sri Lanka followed a combined strategy to address cybersecurity by pursuing both a cybercrime legal reform strategy coupled with a comprehensive information security strategy, and that was the government focus from the very outset. So it was a combined effort from the outset addressing both those twin strategies coupled together. In the early days of legislative drafting, we had extensive public consultations and engaged the private sector in those consultations. The private sector stakeholders who are involved in the legislative drafting process, especially the public consultations, advocated strongly about the need for the country to adopt a globally accepted legal regime, and not just a regime that will stand by itself in our own country. The result of this lobbying or recommendations conveyed with one voice by the private sector in Sri Lanka along with the user community resulted in Sri Lanka pursuing an option to adopt a legal framework based on the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime. This framework supported an environment where the private sector stakeholders and the user community felt more comfortable to report cybercrime incidents because of the checks and balances included in the Sri Lankan computer crimes law, which was entirely based on the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime. So a key message I want to convey is that multi-stakeholder engagement in the formulation of legislative, even law and policy regimes can contribute immensely towards adopting a globally accepted regime, even in a small country like Sri Lanka. And as a result of all these efforts, Sri Lanka is now pursuing an option of even making an accession request to join the Budapest Convention, the first South Asian country to do that. Another area where a multi-stakeholder approach was followed by the government was in the creation of our institutional framework. One example I want to cite, based on what Adli himself said earlier, was the establishment of the Sri Lanka's own CERT. In 2006, multiple options were on the table, whether to pursue a government, a fully owned government option, or whether to have a public-private partnership. Fortunately for us, due to again the early engagement of the user community and the private sector, what was followed was to have a public-private partnership. And the Sri Lankan CERT, the national CERT that was created, was not a fully owned government-run CERT. It combined with the banking community, the ISPs, the private sector, and we got external support from global resources available with Microsoft, Google, and now we have been part of the full Asia-Pacific CERT community for some time and engage the AP CERT actively and work collaboratively with them and also with FIRST. So that's another example I want to cite and end there with some thoughts that early engagement with multiple stakeholders helps, and that's where the concept of multi-stakeholderism can add value, both in the area of drafting a law and policy framework, as well as establishing an institutional framework to drive the whole cybersecurity strategy for the country. Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you. Thank you so much. So finally, I just want to go one last, and then we're going to open this up to much broader questions, discussions, and hopefully some ideas from all of you. I want to go over to Yuri, who's going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the AP CERT and some of the ways that they're collaborating across that region of the world. And I think that's quite interesting, and I think you'll all be interested to hear about it. So take it away, and introduce yourself as well.
Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. My name is Yuri Ito. I am from JP-CERT, Japan's National Computer Emergency Response Team. I'm a Director of Global Coordination. I'm also a chair of AP-CERT, which is the Asia-Pacific Regional Coalition Forum for National CERTs in Asia-Pacific. So we have 22 teams from 19 countries, working together, assisting each other for the cybersecurity incidents, coordinating incidents, helping and assisting each other for remediating the threats. Adley mentioned a little bit about the national CERT roles. We work together in Asia Pacific. But what I would like to talk today is not about the cybersecurity awareness, but we started awareness raising about internet healthiness, and then raising cyber hygiene, which means the importance about clean up activities, and then identifying the root problems, root cause of that, and then fix that to improve the technical ecosystem in the region. And so AP-CERT, we've been working together over 10 years, but I think 2011 was our turning point. We add our vision, we changed our vision, and was saying like, our mission is not only responding to instant response or cybersecurity issues, but our mission is to improve the internet environment, cyberspace environment, by cleaning up the ecosystem and then improving the hygiene. That is really a changing of the mindset. Security is always you, and you draw the border and the rest of the world. And the security is about protecting you, defending you. But changing that mindset from the security to this is a global environmental problem. And what we're cleaning up and raising hygiene is not only you. So the other hygiene, healthcare analogy is you washing your hands. So for example, starting from the health analogy, you have a fever, that symptom. The hospital is can provide you the vaccine to protect you or the medicine to solve that fever. That's what CERT's typical cybersecurity approach, working with the security operations. But at the same time, not to get infected, you wash your hands, and that's something raising the hygiene, the health hygiene. Now we can use that analogy to the cybersecurity as well. To prevent you infected, you can do a couple of basic cyber hygiene, and that's something really important, like awareness raising. But at the same time, what we start promoting is washing hands is not only protecting you, it is to protect the others to be infected. So in a cyber world, protecting your machine is not only protecting your identity or your intellectual property, but avoiding your cyber resource, the device, to be a part of the attack infrastructure being used by the attackers or adversaries. So that type of mindset is something like we need to develop among the CERTs, but not only the CERTs, but with so this is the multi-stakeholder approach, not only the technical community, but with the government. So we reach out to the APEC-TEL, the government, the policymakers, to making sure this is important, not only the instant response capability. We need to have this mindset about cleanup and raising hygiene. This is good for you, good for the others. This is long-term good, raising resiliency about internet. So that's really helps the international collaboration keep the very different culture and authority teams, national teams, to work together. So that went really good. And then this type of the health and hygiene and improving the underlying environment, that type of global environmental approach is great because you need the grassroots approach. I mean, it's a multi-stakeholder approach. Just like we work together to clean the water and have a reduced CO2, it needs a grassroots approach, participation to the policy level, participation from the technical community to education and all NPO, NGO, business sector needs to be involved. So cleanup and hygiene, environmental approach, that type of mindset, development is something that we focused. And in the result, we really keep our regional CERT collaboration tight and bonded. So we created this sort of approach under the name of Cyber Green. And then we're working with the Brazilians, CERT-BL, and also US. We're trying to extend this mindset, the green mindset, to the global approach. This needs to be a global, starting from small success story in Asia Pacific. We're trying to make it global level of green, cyber green approach, and try to continue this awareness raising in collaboration with the other regions as well.
Great, thank you. So now I want to open it up a little bit. I'm going to maybe give you a couple frames to think about. First of all, thank you for that. And I think, you know, we sometimes think lately more and more that really security is about enabling people to do more things. That's what it should be at the end of the day. It's not about stopping people from doing things. It's actually about creating an environment where you can do more. When you're safe and secure and you're in a trusted environment, then you're going to do more online than you did in the past. And that's, I think, really a focus we've had. But I'll throw it out to all of you. You can raise your hand, you can talk. I'll just ask a couple things first. Say who you are and where you're from so people will know. Speak into the microphone so that people can hear you. There seems to be a lot of background noise from these other rooms, so we want to try to break through that noise. But just a couple of things to think about. You can, you know, ask questions or say whatever you want. But I'd like to know from you all what's working in where you are in a multi-stakeholder approach. And also, are there ways that on education and awareness that we could be working together that we should be thinking about? When Jacqueline referenced the meeting we had in Paris earlier this year, it was about trying to create in cybersecurity education awareness what we have. Like, we have all these things like CERTs that work together all the time, and they have all these multi-stakeholder people from all around the world. But in education awareness, we work more siloed. And I think we want to recreate what works in cyber in other areas in education awareness. So we're open to ideas about that. But I see we have a comment right here, and then we'll come over here. So say who you are and speak into the microphone.
Good morning. My name is Christine Hopers. I'm the general manager of CERT BR, the Brazilian CERT. We are maintained by the Brazilian Internet Steering Committee, that is the multi-stakeholder body for internet governance in Brazil. We've been working with awareness for end users since 2000, so this is basically 14 years that we have materials in there. And the decision we had when we decided to create our own material instead of just translating or leveraging has a lot to do with what Adli said, that most of the material that was international was not applicable for local threats. So this was one of the challenges. We've been partnering with a PWG, for example, since the very beginning. We saw the Stop Think Connect being created, but didn't apply for us at that time because the local threats were too different. People were still talking about like traditional phishing, and we were seeing 100% malware. So there was no message for that. There was the landing page for users when they would go fall for phishing. That would not apply for the phishing that was happening in Brazil. Most of the threats, they have like this local flavor. They are very different because you have like different criminals going on. But then you have a whole other aspect, as Yuri said, about how do you prevent the user from doing harm to others? And how do you actually convince them that protecting themselves, they are actually protecting the whole ecosystem, because they have always that mindset, oh, but there's not important in my computer. And in this 14 years, we developed a lot of materials. We developed characters, cartoons, videos, booklets, PowerPoint slides. We have this whole set of materials, and it's being used in a multi-stakeholder manner because part of the material is a book that is being used in legal courses in universities. We have a lot of people from the legal system because they want the right concept, but they want it in not a technical manner. Although we are a CERT and we come from a technical background, we try to do our best to have a correct material, but with a more approachable language, with a lot of illustrations. So we have illustrators that are doing a lot of work to try to put in just one image the whole threat, how to defend, how to protect. And we've been thinking about how to, for example, we could leverage maybe Stop Think Connect message, but the whole thing is we've been talking for years with them and they say, oh no, you have to use our material. And said, that's not going to happen. We have our material. We could use the message. We could have like something to help spread, but we have a lot of material with different threats, with a different message. So not necessarily you see the same threats going everywhere in the world. So we should be more flexible into sharing material. For example, all our material is being translated to Spanish by Internet Society. So we have, and it is a lot of material, so we have some of the material already in Spanish. The idea is not really to translate everything and then put online, so everything that gets ready is already there. So there is already material about behavior in social networks, behavior online, privacy. So we started with a lot of privacy issues with what you were doing that you were harming your own privacy. So there are material in several areas, not necessarily only thinking about consumers and phishing and threats. So we are starting to think. And since the beginning, our goal is to have material that can be used by multipliers. We use the same word in Brazil. So really the idea is how to have material all in Creative Commons, and they can use that material in schools, digital inclusion. We have a lot of NGOs that work with digital inclusion. We have only around 50% of the Brazilian population using the internet. So there is a lot of people coming online. And as these people didn't have like too many years to learn, they will face the threats without having understood the technology itself. So I think this is something to be considered too for developing countries, that you have people just getting online and they didn't have the time to learn the technology. They are already facing the threat. And I think for this whole idea of a clean ecosystem, we've been talking a lot with Yuri, with some other partners from Europe. We know that people from Austria, Hong Kong, they're all talking about this, that the problem is going to get worse if we don't think, instead of creating this barrier and saying, I want to protect myself from the world, you cannot create a barrier in the water, in the air, and it's the same thing in the internet. It's really much more fluid. So I think the whole traditional material for awareness will still be valid for a long time, but we need to think about how to better explain to people that really everything that happens to them will have an impact in the whole society and to everyone. So I think these are some of the challenges for the future that we have to still face. This was just like my initial comment.
We'll go over here and then over here.
Thank you. My name is Vince Cerf. I'm Vice President of Google. And I wanted, first of all, to endorse what Yuri said. The public health metaphor is a very compelling model. It may not be exact, but it fits the situation pretty well. There are aspects of internet insecurity that are not like traffic, for example. You can see the cars coming when you look left and right, but sometimes you can't see the virus coming. So that's a problem with other metaphors. The heart of the matter, really, is that software has bugs, configurations are not put together properly, they have errors, and we have poor security practices, and all of those get exploited. That's the heart of the matter. So the problem that we have is to answer a set of really hard questions in order to reduce our vulnerability due to those weaknesses. One of them is, what can I do to protect myself? What should I do if I'm infected? How should the private sector behave? These are the people that make the software and the services that we're all relying on. We don't actually have control over that software, so even if we know there's a bug in it, there isn't much we can do except maybe download the latest update and hope that that fixes the problem. What should the government be doing? What should the tech sector be doing? And so if we don't have answers to all of those questions, then we will not have a very successful campaign against the vulnerabilities that we're facing. I'm not going to go on and on. There are lots and lots of specific things that we could be doing, and in some cases we are doing, but this has to be seen as a multi-sector campaign where we insist that every member of every sector see this problem as a shared responsibility. There isn't some place to point the finger. It's you, and it's each of us in our various capacities. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'll just point out that in the United States, one of our weeks for October, one of the themes this year for the first time is secure development. So we're trying to get that into the public's mind as well, that they understand that that's actually a very important part of what goes on. So thank you for those comments. I have a comment here, and then in the middle over here we have 2 or 3. So let's go back here. And we'll try to be quick now too, so we have about 15 minutes left. I know a lot of people want to speak, so quickly we'll go through. Go ahead.
I myself do agree with many persons about the important role of the CERT team, but we have to accept that. I agree with her. The limitations of the capacity building of the CERT team also, because they know about the technical expertise, something like that. But when they would like to convey a message to the public, maybe have problems, because in the technical manner, very not a simple language, sometimes seem very difficult to understand. And one more is a third team on around the world maybe have no expertise about the strategy or policy making decision. So we have to be aware about this. In order to raise the public awareness of people, I think the role or the responsibility of everyone.
Thank you. My name is Marcin de Kamiński. I work for the Swedish development agency SIDA. I think this is really interesting discussion, especially since SIDA has a tradition of supporting, for instance, security measures in human rights activism, in repressive regimes especially, and also we have a tradition on working with IXPs and the regional CERTs or NICs especially. But where we see a major gap currently is in the legislatory and the regulatory actions, especially in countries where these kinds of frameworks covering securities or cybersecurity is not really in place yet, where legislation is taken from other frameworks, for instance, like the example with Sri Lanka and Budapest Declaration, but also other frameworks which are maybe not satisfactory, taken human rights into consideration, but mainly works with security issues from above, from a state level. And I think there some cooperation would really be needed in that sector in order to make this appliance of legislatory frameworks also covering human rights and other aspects. Thank you.
We had 2 people here in the middle right next to each other, so you can fight it out. Then we're going to come back over here, and then we'll come back. Okay, go ahead.
My name is Pernilla Tranberg. I work with the Danish government trying to make privacy a new green movement. Thank you very much for sharing your learnings from your campaign. It's very interesting for us. I just have one thing. How do you justify working together with data brokers and big multinational companies, tracking everybody, collecting our data, and when you're working with them, I know Microsoft is trying to use privacy as a competitive parameter, but in India, you are telling everybody that Facebook is completely safe, you can use that without a problem. You work with Experian, a co-founder, it's a data broker, and they are accused of not respecting the safe harbor principles. How do you balance this? Because I understand the multi-stakeholder approach, but you are also giving all these companies a trust stamp. Do you understand what I mean?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure exactly what... I'm sorry, I'm not sure exactly what the question is, but privacy is always a balance. I work specifically in the safety field, and there's always a balance between safety and privacy, security and privacy, but basically we look at these things as sort of 2 sides of the same coin. You can't have security if you don't have privacy. You can't have privacy if you don't have security, but it is a very delicate balance for sure.
But like Experian is a data broker, right? Experian, a co-founder? Experian, and it's just been accused of not respecting safe harbor principles. And they are one of those companies saying, well, you have to be very safe with your data. That's what I don't understand.
Let me just take, and I'll answer quickly, I think understanding saying, from my perspective in multi-stakeholder approaches, there are some issues you have to narrowly, in other words, if you want to try and reach an agreement and reach a consensus to move forward at all, sometimes you have to narrow your focus and start there. And that means sometimes there are going to be people sitting around the table who you don't always agree with about everything. And you know what? That's the way it's always going to be. And so, you know, in the United States, we do have people who have business models of collecting data about people. That can't be solved in the work that we do, right? We can't solve that issue, but we can try to still build a safer, more trusted internet together, even knowing that those issues have to be addressed maybe through a different model. Maybe it's, you know, regulatory, maybe it's public opinion, maybe it's the way things grow out. But in multi-stakeholder, from our perspective, you start with a narrow focus, with a problem that everybody agrees they can solve together, right? If you don't all sitting around the table believe that to start out with as a group, then it's not going to happen. We have a couple more. We had another comment right from the gentleman next to you, and then we're going to come over to this side of the room. We have 2 comments, and I think we have a couple more. So, sir, you can go, say who you are, and we'll come back over to this side.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ali Al-Amadi, and I'm from United Arab Emirates. I work for a company called Help AG. We are experts in information security consultancy. And I used to work for AE CERT, the UAE CERT, national CERT, for 4 years. I was working a lot on many awareness campaigns for the public and for different sectors within UAE. And we always faced the problem in the CERT to reach every individual. Definitely, CERT has a certain capacity and they cannot reach everybody. So what we are doing now, we have started something new last year. I initiated a new national committee that brings together the law enforcement, private, public, schools, universities, everybody in the UAE to actually go and educate every individual. Because at the end of the day, we cannot reach everyone and everybody has a limited resources. And something else that we have done is we have created different working groups. So we do different projects, and we are also involving information security students to use them to go and educate families and parents. And we are also working on bringing on some members from the public to give their view, what they would like to know, what are their problems, to collect some data. So this is something that we are doing, and we have been receiving so much positive feedback so far. It's something new, but I think it will work because we are bringing everybody together, including the CERT. CERT is also part of it. The law enforcement is part of it, Ministry of Interior, and all of these schools, universities, everybody come together to do something for the UAE as a whole, as a country. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll come over here, Betsy, and then we'll go to you, Judah.
Good morning, and my name is Betsy Broder, and I'm with the U.S. Federal Trade Commission. And in addition to being a law enforcement agency which addresses privacy and data security issues, we also are major promoters and supporters of all of the initiatives. And I wanted to say initially that what a wonderful session this is this morning, because you look around the table and by and large people are nodding as they hear the other people speak, and they're writing down ideas. So I applaud the leaders of this discussion. I actually have a question, a general question, and that is, a lot of the discussion has to do with end users on their computers and how they can secure themselves and save and protect the environment. But we also are dealing with lots of small businesses, those who are not around the table with the larger corporations, but may themselves be the sources of a lot of personal identifying information that may not be secure. So my question generally, and I guess not for answer now, but consideration, is what efforts are being made to address those concerns for small businesses? And is the message any different? Or is this something that just needs to be disseminated in that community? So that's just a thought, Michael, that I'd like to share.
Thanks. That's a great question. We need to take that up in greater depth. And let me just say that the FTC's website on guardonline.gov is one of the great consumer websites out there, and actually has a lot of business information as well. Encourage people to look at that. Jordana?
Thank you so much, Michael. I'm Jordana Siegel. I'm from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and NCSA and Microsoft and many others around the table have been partners with us in these related initiatives for many years. I've actually personally been involved with some of the efforts in the United States for almost 10 years, and I just wanted to thank you for bringing this discussion to the IGF, because I think that a fundamental aspect of this these activities is shared responsibility, and it really transcends all the different stakeholders that are around this table that come to the IGF. And I know we're short on time, and I think my colleagues have done a great job around the table of talking about many of the things that we're doing and the things that we're concerned about, but I just hope that we can continue this discussion, because I think it's really ripe for the community, from the CSER community, the technical community, the private sector, large and small, civil society, et cetera. And so and other governments, of course, and I just hope that we can continue the discussion. And I would also point people to the dhs.gov website, where there's a lot of material as well that we've developed in cooperation with NCSA and our private sector partners and other government agencies like the FTC, that is available for your review.
Thanks. I think there was, there's somebody from remote has a question. Okay, then there was somebody over here who okay, we'll get back. Let's do the remote and we'll come to you afterwards, okay?
This comment comes from David Tate, Commonwealth Cybercrime in CHU, London. As has been highlighted by a number of participants, the trust deficit is a major barrier to cooperation between entities. We have found there is a key role to be played by an honest broker to drive cooperation and build strategies between partners with potentially competing agendas and interests.
Yeah, we agree with that too. We believe that having a trusted party in the middle of all this actually is a very important role in any multi-stakeholder work. We have a comment over here, and then I think we'll come back over here. All right,
hello.
Here first, then over here, then back there, okay?
My name is Gary Mukelabai. I'm from Zambia, from the regulator. The regulator is the one running the national CERT, and our CERT has been running since 2012. Mainly we've been carrying out awareness on the legal people, the judges and the lawyers, and the law enforcement. We built a computer lab, a forensics lab, which was opened last month by the ITU Deputy Secretary General, and we are hosting a cyber drill for Africa at the end of this month. Our biggest challenge has been imparting awareness to the legal people and having a strong legal framework to work on to. So my question to ENISA, I've seen a lot of information about cybersecurity on the ENISA website, is if they have any programs working with African countries, especially in capacity building on the legal framework side. Thank you.
We don't have specific programs. What I can say is that in Cybersecurity Month in 2013, we had African countries participating and sharing materials and getting the best practices from Europe. So we had that in the cybersecurity, but we can always share best practices in education. And if you have something concrete, please come back to me, and we can do something like this.
Okay, we have time for these last couple of comments, one here and then one over there. So just if I can ask you to be relatively quick, that'd be great.
My name is Alex Grigsby. I'm from the Government of Canada. My comment is really quick. It's just to respond to Betsy's question in terms of getting small and medium enterprises, raising awareness with them on cybersecurity issues. Last year, during Cybersecurity Awareness Month, the Government of Canada released a small and medium cybersecurity guide for small and medium businesses. So if anybody here is interested in that, you can go to the website www.getcybersafe.ca, and it's there in English and in French. So if you're interested and if you want to talk more about it, you can come see me after. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't realize that our friends from Canada were here. We work very closely with Public Case Safety Canada as well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kachida Mitothan. I work for the Electronic Transaction Development Agency in Thailand, and I just would like to update some multi-stakeholder issue in Thailand that we also set up the group called Making Online Better, or we call in short as the MOB, M-O-B MOB. The objective of this group is to make the online environment secure and safe in Thailand, and also build the capacity building and also the awareness for the people. And for example, in case that the regulation is not clear enough, we will set the code of conduct, and we build together like between the private sector that include like such as Google Thailand and eBay and ISP Association. We built up the group together and draft the code of conduct for the industry sector to as like a self-regulation. And for this project that we think that if we can help environment that we build it together between private and government sector, we make it better for the environment. And also, of course, for the threat tackle, in Thailand we also have the Thai CERT, and we cooperate with the Malaysia CERT and other countries, and we're willing to cooperate more in the future. Thank you.
So that's all we have time for this morning. Obviously, this is the beginning of a conversation, not the end of a conversation. So I want to thank everybody, and first of all, thank everybody for their active participation this morning and the thoughtful comments that they've made. And just a couple of thoughts for me at the very end. One is, as we go around the table and we hear what people are doing, we realize, and we should all remember, that a lot of people are doing really good work. And I think our goal, at least my goal personally, and whether this becomes part of IGF, that's a whole other, is that we all work together more. Right? It's only, that's what the internet is. The internet is all of us connecting. And I want us, if anybody's interested in continuing to connect, finding ways, we hear about all these great materials created in other places in the world. We do not want to reinvent the wheel here. We want to use the best that people are creating. There's a lot of smart people working on these issues everywhere. So in any way that we can work together, I'm opening that door to all of you to come to us if we can help, or vice versa. We'll come to you now that we hear about some of the things you have. You can contact me easily. I am Michael at staysafeonline.org. You're more than welcome to email me at any time. And I hope we can continue this conversation and make this part of the dialogue ongoing, because if we're going to have a digital world, we need every single digital citizen to be able to use the internet safely and securely. And we need to build a platform that we all trust so that we can do that and grow it in even more ways than we have to date. So I look forward to hearing from you all and maybe working with many of you in the time ahead. So thank you very much. Thanks for coming this morning.